prevent nuclear proliferation would instead spark a nuclear arms race in the most dangerous part of the planet. This deal won't be a farewell to arms. It would be a farewell to arms control.
A stark warning from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu earlier this year when he addressed a joint session of Congress. Now Saudi Arabia is vowing to match Iran's nuclear capability. Gulf leaders argue that if Iran gets to move ahead with its nuclear program, President Obama cannot credibly argue that those Gulf Arab states should not follow down the same path. Joining us now, Alan Dershowitz, Harvard Law professor, Newsmax blogger, and author of Terror Tunnels, The Case for Israel's Just War Against Hamas. Alan, welcome to Newsmax Prime.
Thank you so much.
So, is this in fact the de facto start of a nuclear arms race in the Middle East?
It is the start of a nuclear arms race. It is the start of an ordinary arms race because the president now has to compensate the Saudis by giving them incredibly sophisticated weapons. It may end Israel's qualitative superiority. It may lead to war. And it is about the worst foreign policy blunder any president has made, certainly since the war in Iraq.
You have been
inexcusable.
You have been candid and vocal in your criticism of President Obama, despite your longtime support of our chief executive. With this threat of this arms race, is this going to give our president any pause to rethink this Iranian deal?
No. The president is totally committed to it. So committed that he essentially told the Iranians that it's your call. You tell us what we have to agree to, and we'll agree to it. It's the worst negotiation I have ever seen. I have to tell you, I wouldn't hire this president to negotiate a one-month lease for me on an apartment. He basically played poker with all of his cards showing, and the Iranians were playing chess by hiding their part of the board. It was just a dumb negotiation. You know, it was a great French general who once said it was worse than immoral. It was a blunder. This is a blunder. The president got us into a situation where there are no alternatives now, essentially, except to accept a bad deal or to allow the sanction regime to disappear. But he got us into that position. He didn't have to do that. He let the Iranians know that the deal was so important to him that they could make demand after demand, and he gave in to demand after demand. This president is going to go down in history as a foreign policy disaster.
Strong words, and obviously
from
real
somebody
concerns.
Who supported him twice.
Well, we have this situation, and of course this past week, Alan, at Camp David, the Gulf Arab states gathered for a so-called summit, but several of the leaders of those states stayed away. Now, what does that tell us about their assessment of the president and his standing?
This president has managed to alienate everybody in the Middle East. The Israelis don't like him. The Palestinians don't like him. The Saudis don't like him. The Egyptians don't like him. The Jordanians don't like him. The Emirates don't like them. Only the Iranians like him. There's something wrong when the Iranians are your best friend in the Middle East and they're swearing death to America, non-negotiable demand to destroy Israel. There's something very wrong with that. What he's doing is he's bartering away all of American allies' support in exchange for a bet, a betting parlor bet on maybe this will have an impact on Iran. And we can see the impact it's already had. They've shot on ships sailing in international waters. They are now becoming more and more emboldened. This is just a disaster.
Well, we take a look at decisions elsewhere that we would like to get your comments on. Specifically, earlier this week, the Vatican officially recognizing the Palestinian state in a treaty. Your assessment of that decision by the Holy See?
I don't know why they don't recognize Tibet. I don't know why they don't recognize Chechnya. I don't know why they don't recognize other groups that are disenfranchised. Why not the Kurds? Why the Palestinians? Why pick the one country that has resorted to terrorism, refused to come to the peace negotiating table? Even today, Abbas said, we're not going to sit down and negotiate peace with the Israelis unless they meet 4 advanced conditions. You know, you don't recognize a country that doesn't want to negotiate The Tibetans want to negotiate. The Kurds want to negotiate. Only the Palestinians don't want to negotiate. So this will encourage the Palestinians to refuse to negotiate. Their position will be, why should we negotiate? We're getting recognition from the Vatican, from Sweden, from various European parliaments, from the United Nations, from the International Criminal Court. Why negotiate? We're getting everything we want without negotiation.
Pitfalls for both our president and for Pope Francis in the eyes of Alan Dershowitz, the author of Terror Tunnels, the case for Israel's just war against Hamas. Alan Dershowitz, as always, we thank you for your unvarnished and candid assessment of some of these situations. It's good to have you here. And stick around. There's more to come on Newsmax Prime.